quiet summer morning in the year 2000, a 16-year-old girl arrived at work, excited about her first real job. 13 minutes later, she had vanished without a trace from a small town beach in broad daylight. Her shoes sat empty on the sand. Her lifeguard chair stood abandoned, and a mother's worst nightmare had just begun. This is the story of Molly Bish, a case that would become the most extensive missing person search in Massachusetts history, a mystery that has haunted the tiny town of Warren for 25 years, and a family's unrelenting quest for answers that continues to this very day. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of New England's most perplexing, unsolved mysteries. If you're new here, we explore the forgotten crimes and cold cases from small-town America. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Warren, Massachusetts is the kind of place most Americans dream about when they think of small-town life. Nestled in the heart of Worcester County, this rural community of just under 5,000 residents embodied everything that seemed safe about America at the turn of the millennium. Tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, unlocked doors, and children playing freely in the warm summer sun. For John and Molly Bish, Warren represented a fresh start and a safe haven. Years earlier, when their daughter Molly was just 1 year old, the family had lived in Detroit, Michigan, but urban violence shattered their sense of security when a young woman in their neighborhood was followed from work, abducted, and murdered. Desperate to find peace and safety for their growing family, John and Maggie made a life-changing decision. They moved to John's hometown of Warren, a place where crime was virtually unheard of. The Bish family flourished in Warren. They raised 3 children: Heather, John Jr., and Molly. By the summer of 2000, Heather and John Jr. had gone off to college, while Molly had just completed her junior year at Tantascwa Regional High School. She was 16 years old, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and stood 5 feet 7 inches tall. Friends and family described her as joyful, silly, and sweet, with an infectious smile that could light up any room. That summer, Molly landed her first real job, one she was incredibly proud of. She had worked hard to become certified as a lifeguard, and she was hired to watch over swimmers at Commons Pond, a small recreational beach area in the central residential part of Warren. It was the perfect summer job for an energetic teenager. The pond was beautiful, surrounded by woods, peaceful and serene. But that isolation would soon become terrifyingly significant. June 27, 2000 began as an ordinary Tuesday morning. The sky was clear, the temperature was rising, and Molly was excited to start another day at her new job. At 9:50 in the morning, Molly and her mother Maggie stopped at a local convenience store. Security cameras captured what would become the last known image of Molly alive: a teenage girl in a pink tank top and plaid boxer shorts, her whole life still ahead of her. 6 minutes later, at 9:56, they checked in at the Warren Police Department to pick up Molly's lifeguard radio. Everything seemed perfectly normal. At 9:58, Maggie pulled into the parking lot at Commons Pond and dropped Molly off for her shift. Molly grabbed her blue lifeguard bag and her beach chair and headed toward the water's edge. But something was bothering Maggie. The day before, on June 26th, when she had driven Molly to work, she had noticed something unusual. A white sedan was parked in the beach lot, and a man sat inside. He had a mustache and was simply sitting there watching. The sight had made Maggie uneasy, so uneasy that she had even mentioned it to Molly. Now, on this Tuesday morning, that same white car was nowhere to be seen, but Maggie couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in her chest. As Maggie drove away from Commons Pond that morning, she glanced in her rearview mirror one last time. She watched as Molly walked toward the beach, carrying her belongings, ready to start her shift. It was the last time Maggie would ever see her daughter alive. The first beachgoer arrived at Commons Pond just after 10 o'clock that morning, only minutes after Molly had been dropped off. The scene they encountered was chilling. Molly's lifeguard chair sat empty. Her blue sandals were placed neatly on the beach. Her lifeguard kit was open, its contents scattered as if Molly had been in the middle of setting up. But Molly herself was gone. 13 minutes, that's all it took. In just 13 minutes in broad daylight at a public beach, 16-year-old Molly Bish had vanished into thin air. When the Warren police were notified that the lifeguard was missing, they responded immediately. This wasn't a case of a teenager wandering off or skipping work. Molly's personal belongings were right there. Her shoes, her bag. Everything pointed to something far more sinister. Within hours, an extensive search operation was underway. Police officers, firefighters, search and rescue teams, and volunteers from all over Massachusetts descended on Warren. Helicopters circled overhead. Search dogs combed through the surrounding woods. Divers plunged into the depths of Commons Pond. The FBI joined the investigation. The search for Molly Bish became the most extensive and expensive missing person operation in the history of Massachusetts. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Flyers with Molly's smiling face were distributed across New England and beyond. The case was featured on America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries, and countless news programs. Thousands of tips poured in from across the country. But despite all the effort, all the resources, and all the attention, Molly remained missing. Investigators focused heavily on Madge's account of the suspicious man in the white sedan. Police created a composite sketch based on her description: a white male, possibly in his 40s or 50s, with a mustache, sitting alone in a white car near the pond. But who was he, and where had he gone? The breakthrough, if it can even be called that, came nearly 3 years later. In the fall of 2002, a hunter was tracking through the woods in the neighboring town of Palmer, Massachusetts, about 5 miles from Commons Pond. Deep in the forest, he noticed something that caught his eye: a piece of blue fabric partially buried in the leaves. It looked similar to the blue bathing suit Molly had been wearing the day she disappeared. Investigators returned to the site and began a painstaking search of the area. On June 9, 2003, nearly 3 years after Molly vanished, her remains were finally found. The Bish family's worst fears were confirmed. Molly had been murdered. The case officially shifted from a missing person investigation to a homicide. Over the years, multiple suspects and persons of interest emerged in Molly's case, but none have been definitively linked to her abduction and murder. One early suspect was a man named Robert Battistoni. He had been in the area where Molly's body was found, and he resembled the composite sketch of the man Maggie had seen in the white sedan. Battistoni had a violent criminal history and had served prison time for repeatedly assaulting a teenage girl in the early 1990s. When newspaper articles identified him as a potential suspect in Molly's case, Battistoni attempted suicide in prison. The Bish family pushed for DNA testing, hoping it would finally provide answers. But Battistoni died in November 2014 before any conclusive evidence could tie him to the crime. Another suspect who drew investigators' attention was Rodney Stanger. He had lived in Southbridge, Massachusetts, near Warren, for over 20 years. 1 year after Molly's murder, Stanger moved to Florida. Years later, when Stanger's girlfriend was murdered in Florida, her sister contacted Massachusetts authorities with suspicions about Stanger. He had access to a white car. He was known to fish at Commons Pond and hunt in the woods, where Molly's body was found. And, chillingly, he matched the description of the man Maggie had seen. But once again, investigators could not find enough evidence to charge him. Then, in June 2021, authorities announced a major development. A new person of interest had been identified: Francis Sumner Sr., a convicted sex offender with a long and violent criminal history. In 1981, Sumner had lured a 21-year-old woman to his auto repair shop, abducted her, and brutally assaulted her. He He served time in prison and was released on parole in 1998, just 2 years before Molly disappeared. Sumner lived in the area, had children around Molly's age, and his appearance closely matched the composite sketch of the man seen at Commons Pond. Even more disturbing, thousands of tips about Sumner had been received over the years, suggesting that others in the community had their suspicions as well. But there was a major problem. Francis Sumner had died in May 2016, 5 years before he was named as a person of interest. Investigators collected DNA from Sumner's relatives and compared it to evidence found at the crime scene. In July 2022, the results came back. The DNA did not match. The Bish family was devastated. Once again, they were left without answers. Today, 25 years after Molly Bish vanished from Commons Pond, her case remains officially unsolved. The Worcester County District Attorney's Office continues to investigate, testing evidence with newer forensic technologies and following up on leads. An anonymous tip line remains open for anyone with information. But while justice has remained elusive, Molly's legacy endures. In the wake of their daughter's disappearance, John and Molly Bish founded the Molly Bish Center and Foundation in collaboration with Anna Maria College. The foundation has photographed, fingerprinted, and created identification cards for over 46,000 children. They've helped pass legislation to enhance child safety laws in Massachusetts and played a crucial role in bringing the AMBR alert system to the state. Molly's love, her family says, continues to ripple outward, protecting children and giving hope to other families facing similar tragedies. The town of Warren has never forgotten Molly. Every year on the anniversary of her disappearance, a candlelight vigil is held in her honor. The community that once represented safety and innocence has been forever changed, but it refuses to let Molly's memory fade. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and as always, we'll see you in the next video.